Everyone in the office feared the rude CEO millionaire until the new cashier finally stood up to him.
Why is the quarterly report not uploaded to the executive dashboard? It was due an hour ago. Who failed to do their job?
Do you think raising your voice makes you more respected, Mr. Graves?
The words sliced through the polished silence of the Crestwood Hotel lobby like a crack of thunder. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Fingers froze over tablet screens. Even the bellhop pushing a luggage cart came to a full stop. Samuel Graves turned, slowly. At 35, he was a man whose presence rarely invited opposition. Tall, sharply built, his black tailored suit and open collar gave him an effortless authority. His eyes, cold and sharp, scanned the room like they always did, until they landed on her, the girl behind the cashier desk. She stood with a quiet defiance, hands clasped in front of her, blonde hair pulled neatly into a ponytail. Her uniform was pristine. Her name badge read, Chloe. She had only been hired 3 weeks ago. And yet here she was, speaking as if she had every right to. He took a step toward her. "Do you think disrespect earns you a place here?" he asked, his voice low, controlled. "I think fear only creates silence," she answered, "and silence never leads to improvement." The air in the room tightened. The other staff stood frozen behind the concierge desk, waiting for the explosion they were sure would follow. It had all started only minutes before, when Samuel had stormed into the lobby like a thundercloud. The energy had changed the moment the glass doors opened. His eyes scanned the space, evaluating everything, from the lighting to the way Henry, the senior concierge, adjusted his tie. He stopped at the center of the lobby, pulled out his phone, checked the dashboard. Nothing. That was when he snapped. "Why is the quarterly report not uploaded to the executive dashboard?" he barked, his voice booming across the marble walls. "It was due an hour ago. Who failed to do their job?" Henry had stepped forward, nervously fumbling with a tablet. "I believe there was a syncing issue with the reporting system, sir. I've already contacted IT." Samuel's voice cut in, sharp and cold. "Syncing issue? What I hear is an excuse, not a solution. We are not some mid-tier motel struggling to keep the lights on. This is Crestwood. If you can't keep up, maybe you're no longer fit for the role." Henry's face flushed. He lowered his gaze. The shame was visible in every crease of his suit. That was when Chloe spoke. Now facing her, Samuel said nothing, his face unreadable, his posture still as stone. Chloe knew she was risking her job. But something in her couldn't stay silent, not when she saw someone like Henry being publicly shamed, not after everything she had witnessed in life. She refused to be another employee who cowered. "I understand holding people accountable," she added, "but accountability should not look like humiliation." Samuel blinked once. In his world, people did not talk back. They did not challenge him. They apologized, nodded, stepped aside. Yet here she was, new, unknown, unimportant on paper, and she had called him out. And he had no immediate answer. Chloe held his gaze for a heartbeat longer, then quietly turned and walked back behind the cashier counter. The marble floor echoed under her shoes. She did not glance back. The lobby remained silent. Samuel stood still. The elevator behind him chimed, its doors sliding open. But he did not move. For the first time in a long while, he looked not angry, but curious, disarmed. Employees slowly returned to their work, stealing cautious glances his way, but he said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the place where Chloe had stood, her voice still echoing in his mind. And somewhere deep in the quiet part of himself he rarely acknowledged, something shifted. Samuel Graves hadn't always been the man who ruled with silence. There was a time, before the cold suits and colder stares, when he believed in people, in laughter, in trust. In his 20s, Samuel was a dreamer. He launched his first hospitality startup with his best friend Colin. They had passion, long nights, and a vision to make luxury feel personal. Samuel brought his girlfriend Claire into their circle. He thought he had everything. Then at 28, it all collapsed. Colin vanished, along with millions in investor money. Claire disappeared too, together. Samuel was left with debts, lawsuits, and betrayal. A week later, his mother, his last family, died suddenly from heart failure. Something in him broke. From that point, Samuel built not from hope, but from rage. He rebuilt alone, fueled by distrust. Never believe anyone, he told himself. People betray. By 35, he was a multimillionaire. The Crestwood hotel chain was his empire, efficient, elite, and ruled by fear. His board respected him. His staff feared him. No one challenged him, but no one really knew him. Because every Sunday, without fail, Samuel changed. Out of his suits into jeans and a hoodie, he visited St. Agnes Children's Home across town. The kids called him Mr. Sam. He brought food, played guitar, fixed broken toys, listened to them talk about lost parents. No press, no publicity, just peace. It was the only place he allowed himself to feel human again. Chloe Hart grew up knowing the world wasn't fair. Her mother, Maria, worked as a hotel room attendant for over 20 years, kind, tireless, proud. But one rainy afternoon, a cruel guest accused her of spilling coffee on his expensive shoes. She was fired on the spot. Chloe was 17. She came home to find her mother crying quietly on the kitchen floor. "Justice is for people with power," her mother said, "not people like us." That moment burned into Chloe's bones. Later in college, she trusted the wrong man. He was sweet, supportive, and promised the world. Until he drained her savings and vanished. Chloe dropped out and took 2 jobs to support her mom. She made 2 promises: never be fooled again, and never stay silent when someone was wronged. Working at Crestwood was supposed to be temporary, a stepping stone. But from day one, Chloe noticed what others ignored: the stiff shoulders when the CEO entered, the way older staff avoided eye contact, the smiles that vanished the moment Samuel Graves appeared. Still, she worked hard, smiled, observed. Then one morning, she watched Samuel humiliate an elderly concierge over a small mistake. The man's hands trembled. No one spoke. Something inside Chloe flared, something forged from watching her mother cry all those years ago. So she spoke up. Not to be brave, not to rebel, but because silence to her felt like betrayal. And some people, like Chloe, are shaped not by comfort, but by pain. And pain, when turned into purpose, becomes power. The staff shortage hit mid-week, and Chloe was reassigned from the quiet side of the guest services desk to the main lobby, front and center. It was the heart of the hotel, where the foot traffic was constant and the pressure never let up. It also happened to be the one place Samuel Graves passed through multiple times a day. From the moment she stepped behind the new desk, she could feel the difference. Conversations were clipped, smiles were tight. Everyone seemed to stand straighter, breathe quieter, as if trying not to attract attention. Chloe held her own. She greeted guests with warmth, offered directions with ease, and kept her tone polite but cheerful. But on her 3rd day in the new post, her confidence was put to the test. Samuel appeared without warning, stepping out of a meeting with 2 executives trailing behind him. As he crossed the lobby, he passed near the concierge desk, right as Chloe was assisting a guest. And if you need anything else during your stay, please don't hesitate to let us know," she said, finishing her sentence with her usual professional smile. Samuel paused mid-stride. He turned to her, his voice calm but laced with condescension. "If that is the voice you use to apply for this job, it explains how I made the mistake of hiring you." Chloe froze. Heat surged up her neck. Around her, the guest she was assisting looked away uncomfortably. A junior concierge ducked behind the counter. No one said a word. But Chloe inhaled slowly and turned to him, her voice steady. "And I'm starting to understand why no one here dares to smile." The words hit harder than even she expected. Samuel blinked, just once. A flicker of something passed across his face, surprise perhaps, but it vanished almost instantly. He said nothing more and walked away, the two executives hurrying to keep pace. The lobby remained frozen for a beat longer before the quiet hum of daily routine cautiously returned. Chloe sat back down, her hands trembling beneath the counter. She knew she had crossed a line, but something inside her refused to regret it. She was not afraid of Samuel Graves. At least, that was what she told herself. Later that week, the tension between them remained unspoken but ever present. He passed by her desk more often now, sometimes glancing in her direction, sometimes not. She never greeted him, and he never acknowledged her. But then came that afternoon. Chloe had just stepped outside on her break, needing a breath of fresh air after a long shift of complaints and check-ins. As she rounded the corner by the valet loop, she spotted a small commotion ahead. An elderly man in a wheelchair had tipped sideways on the uneven pavement, his groceries scattered across the sidewalk. A few people stood nearby, hesitating, unsure whether to help. Chloe quickened her pace, but someone beat her to it. Samuel was already there, kneeling beside the man, one arm gently steadying his shoulder, while the other gathered up cans of soup and a loaf of bread. His suit jacket had slipped off in the motion. He was murmuring something Chloe could not hear, but his expression, soft, patient, was so unlike the man she knew that she stopped in her tracks. The elderly man touched Samuel's arm in gratitude, and that was when Samuel looked up. He saw her. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Chloe, frozen mid-step, Samuel still crouched by the wheelchair. Then, in a single movement, Samuel stood, adjusted his sleeves, and walked away without a word, leaving the man safely upright and nodding in thanks. He did not wait for acknowledgement. He did not explain himself. He just left. Chloe remained there, standing in the breeze, watching his retreating figure with a strange tightness in her chest. She had labeled him a tyrant, a corporate machine. But now, doubt crept in. Had she seen the real Samuel? Or had she just caught a glimpse of something he had spent years trying to bury? The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement outside the Crestwood Hotel. The street in front of the main entrance bustled with guests arriving, valets rushing to park cars, and delivery trucks backing into loading zones. Chloe stepped out of the side entrance, her arms full with paper bags from the cafe across the street, extra orders for a VIP suite. She had promised to get them herself, not trusting the chaotic lunch rush. Her phone buzzed in her pocket and she glanced at it briefly. A message from her mother. At the same moment, the crosswalk light blinked white. Without looking, Chloe stepped into the street. She did not see the black car turning the corner too fast, tires screeching slightly as it veered to make the green light, but someone else did. "Chloe!" She barely heard her name before someone slammed into her from the side. Strong arms wrapped around her, pulling her body away from the oncoming vehicle just in time. The momentum knocked both of them off the pavement, her bags flying, crashing to the ground. She stumbled backward, heart thudding in her chest, wind knocked from her lungs. When she opened her eyes, she was pressed against a firm chest, a heartbeat pounding fast beneath her cheek. Samuel. His arms were around her, protective, unwavering. His breath came in sharp, rapid bursts against her hair. She could feel the tension in his shoulders, the pressure in his hold, not as a man trying to dominate, but as someone who had feared the worst. For a moment, neither moved. Their surroundings blurred, the honking of a horn in the distance, someone shouting at the driver, the rustle of a nearby tree. All that existed was the space between them, and even that was vanishing. Chloe slowly looked up. Their eyes met. Samuel's gaze was not cold or calculating. It was wide, shaken, filled with something raw and entirely human. His hand still rested gently on her back, as if to make sure she was real. "You," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you okay?" It was the first time Chloe had heard that tone from him, strained, fragile, almost scared. She nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "Yes, I think so." He blinked once, then slowly released her. His hands hovered a moment longer before falling to his sides. Chloe stepped back, her breath shallow. Her hands were trembling slightly, and she clutched them together to hide it. "Thank you," she said quietly. Samuel nodded. "You weren't watching." "I was distracted." He opened his mouth as if to scold her, then stopped himself. His jaw tightened, and he looked away briefly. "I saw the car," he said instead. "There wasn't time to think." She nodded again, unsure what else to say. The moment stretched. Then Chloe bent down, silently collecting the crushed paper bags that had burst open in the fall. Samuel knelt beside her without a word, helping gather the spilled pastries and coffee cups. When their hands brushed over a single fallen croissant, she pulled hers back quickly. Samuel paused, holding the item, then handed it to her with a quiet, unreadable look. They stood. Neither said anything more. Chloe turned toward the hotel. "I should get this to the suite." Samuel nodded. "Be careful next time." There was no bite to his voice, no command, just concern. She walked back inside, heart still racing, unsure if it was from the near accident or the way he had held her. The lobby swallowed her up again, familiar, structured, routine. But nothing felt routine anymore. That night, Chloe lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment. The room was silent, but her mind replayed the moment again and again. The blur of motion, the strength of his arms, the thud of his heartbeat against hers, his voice low and shaken. "Are you okay?" She turned onto her side, pillow clenched beneath her. She had seen glimpses of another Samuel before, the man who helped an old man in a wheelchair, who did not seek credit. But this was something else entirely, and for the first time since she had started at Crestwood, Chloe did not feel certain about who exactly Samuel Graves really was. The sky was overcast that Saturday afternoon, the kind of soft gray that made the world feel quieter somehow. Chloe stood across the street, her hands tucked into the pockets of her coat, watching as Samuel stepped out of his sleek black car, not in his usual suit but in jeans, sneakers, and a faded hoodie. He looked normal. More than that, he looked almost out of place, as if he had shed the armor of authority that usually surrounded him. She followed at a distance as he walked through the rusted gates of a small building tucked between apartment complexes. There was no sign, but Chloe recognized it immediately. St. Agnes Children's Home. She had donated books there last year, after cleaning out her college storage unit. She remembered the peeling blue paint, the flower beds that always looked half wilted but cared for. The place never had enough resources, but the staff had heart. She moved closer, careful not to make a sound. The door creaked open in front of Samuel before he even knocked. A little girl with pigtails ran out and threw herself at him. "Uncle E!" she squealed. More children followed, pouring out like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Uncle E, you came!" Samuel laughed, an honest, easy sound that Chloe had never heard before. He knelt, arms wide, gathering them into a hug. One little boy climbed onto his back while another tugged at his sleeve. "Did you bring the guitar?" one of them asked eagerly. Samuel held up a worn black case and winked. Would I ever come without it? They cheered as he was pulled inside by a dozen little hands. Chloe stepped closer, stopping just outside one of the windows. She stayed behind the cracked wooden frame, careful not to be seen. Inside, the common room was small but warm. A rug covered most of the floor, and drawings taped to the walls fluttered slightly from a nearby fan. Samuel sat on a faded sofa, tuning the guitar with familiar hands. The children gathered around, some sitting cross-legged on the floor, others leaning against him. He strummed softly, then began to sing a silly made-up song about a giraffe who wanted to be a chef. The kids giggled and sang along, clapping on beat. Chloe stood frozen, a lump rising in her throat. This wasn't the man who barked orders in marble lobbies. This wasn't the man who could silence an entire hotel floor with a glare. This was someone else entirely. Someone who laughed. Someone who listened. Someone who gave. She stayed for 10 more minutes, heart aching with something she could not name, then turned and walked away before he could spot her. The next morning, just after the breakfast rush, Chloe was wiping down the front desk when her phone buzzed. From unknown number, coffee, 5 p.m. "There's something I think we should talk about." Her heart skipped. She knew who it was without asking. At exactly 5, they met at a quiet corner cafe 2 blocks from the hotel. Samuel was already there, sitting outside with 2 cups waiting. No security, no assistance, just him. "You followed me yesterday," he said without accusation, only calm curiosity. Chloe's eyes widened slightly. Yes, I did. I figured," he said, sipping his coffee. No one looks that stunned at a coffee order unless they've seen something they were not meant to. Chloe smiled awkwardly. "I wasn't spying. I just needed to understand." He nodded, then looked away for a long moment. "They call me Uncle E," he said softly. "Started coming there a few years ago after a board meeting went sideways. I needed to remember what kindness looked like." Chloe said nothing, just let the silence stretch between them. After a pause, Samuel turned back to her, his voice lower, more introspective. "I built walls, Chloe, thick ones, steel, reinforced, impossible to climb. Everyone thinks it's because I'm arrogant or cold." He met her eyes. "But the truth is, sometimes we put on armor not to be strong, but to survive." The words hung in the air like fog. Chloe blinked, her breath catching. She had expected a deflection, a witty remark, an awkward brush-off, but instead he gave her truth. Raw, unfiltered, and it shattered something in her, because she understood that kind of survival. She had lived it. Her voice trembled slightly. "I know what that's like." He smiled gently, the first real smile she had ever seen from him. No arrogance, no control, just a man stripped of everything, finally letting someone see. They sat for a long time after that, talking, listening. No job titles, no company roles. Just 2 people, both with scar tissue, finally allowing a little light through the cracks. The whispers started small, just a murmur in the hallway, a glance exchanged over the water cooler. But by the end of the week, they had spread like wildfire. Looks like being a cashier is not such a dead end after all. Must be nice getting your bubble tea delivered personally by the CEO. It was Amy who said it loudest, her voice cutting across the break room like a scalpel, just loud enough for Chloe to hear as she passed by. Seems the cashier found herself a fast lane to heaven. CEO perks aren't usually served with boba, but hey, who's judging? Laughter followed. Short, bitter, mean. Chloe stopped in her tracks, her face drained of color. Her stomach dropped, not from embarrassment, but from something worse. He knew. He had to know. And yet, he said nothing. For days she had felt the weight of glances, the slow shift in how her co-workers greeted her. Where once there had been friendliness, there was now tight-lipped smiles, avoidance, polite distance. And Samuel, who had once found every excuse to pass her desk, to ask if she had eaten, to share a quiet look, had been silent. No calls, no texts, no coffee, nothing. That night Chloe stood outside his office, heart pounding. The corridor was empty, the hotel mostly quiet, save for the occasional ding of an elevator. She knocked. "Come in," Samuel called without looking up. He was seated behind his desk, the lamplight casting soft shadows across his face. When he glanced up and saw her, something flickered in his eyes, but it disappeared quickly. No smile, no warmth, just waiting. "Do you know what's being said about me?" Chloe asked, stepping into the room. Samuel closed the folder in front of him slowly. "I've heard rumors." "Rumors?" she repeated. "You mean the insinuation that I'm sleeping my way up the corporate ladder? That I'm some charity case you're entertaining between board meetings?" His jaw tightened. Chloe's voice cracked, but she pushed forward. "And you let it happen. You let them believe it." "I don't owe anyone an explanation," Samuel said, quiet but firm. "Especially not for something that isn't true." "No," she said, voice rising. "You owe it to me." He stood, but didn't approach. "I didn't want to make things worse." "By saying nothing? That's what made it worse." "I didn't know how to fix it," he admitted. "I didn't know how to not ruin what we have." She looked at him, her eyes shimmering. "You already did." He swallowed hard, hands curling at his sides. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. "But you did," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "And the worst part is, you didn't even try to stop it." Samuel said nothing. He wanted to say he cared, that he hadn't been able to sleep since he saw her face fall in the hallway, that he'd rehearsed 100 apologies, but none of them had felt safe, that letting people close had always ended in destruction. But none of those words left his lips. Instead, Chloe stepped forward, pulled a small key from her pocket, and placed it on his desk. "I'm taking a week off. I need to figure out if I was wrong to trust you." She turned, walking slowly toward the door. Samuel took half a step forward, then froze. "Chloe," he began. She paused, hand on the doorknob, and looked back one last time. He was standing in the same place, his lips parted slightly as if he were about to say something, anything, but his silence screamed louder than any words ever could. Her chest tightened, but she nodded once and left. The door clicked shut behind her. Samuel remained motionless for several seconds. Then slowly he sat down, elbows on his desk, head in his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were dark and unreadable. He reached out and picked up the key. It was still warm from her hand. He clenched his fist around it, so tightly the edge pressed into his skin, turning it red. Across from him, the chair where Chloe always sat was empty, and it felt like the room had lost all its air. Chloe's inner thought, I used to believe that if you were honest, if you cared deeply enough, you would never be left behind. But I was wrong. Silence isn't mercy. It's abandonment in disguise. The hotel felt quieter, not because things were less busy, guests still checked in, emails still pinged, but because something was missing. Chloe had been gone for 6 days. Samuel felt it. In the silence when he passed the front desk, in the absence of a smile that had become too familiar. This time he did not retreat. He acted. At the start of the week, he called for an all-staff meeting. The room filled quickly, buzzing with whispers and speculation. He stood at the front, dressed in black as always, but there was something different in his stance, a quiet fire in his eyes. If any of you believe that success here can be bought with charm, manipulation, or proximity to power, he said, then you should take a hard look at your own understanding of integrity. Amy flinched in her seat. I've built this company on structure and discipline, but I also let fear speak louder than fairness. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. He paused, then continued. I owe someone an apology, not behind closed doors, but here, where the damage started. His voice softened. I let someone I care about walk away, thinking I didn't see her, that I didn't respect her, and I was wrong. The room was dead silent. She's not here, he finished, but I hope she hears me. And then he left, leaving the staff speechless. The next night, the hotel hosted a charity gala for St. Agnes Children's Home, the place Samuel had visited for years. Chloe received the invitation in an unmarked envelope. She hesitated, unsure if she should go, but something in her heart whispered, go. She arrived quietly, keeping to the back of the room. The MC took the stage, announcing that the scheduled speaker had fallen ill. The crowd murmured. The atmosphere faltered. Then Samuel stepped onto the stage. No suit, just a white shirt with rolled sleeves and an old black guitar in hand. He took the mic. I'm not a speaker, he said, and I'm not a performer, but sometimes silence causes more damage than truth ever could. He scanned the room. His eyes paused just briefly on the back where Chloe stood still. I used to think hiding who I was kept me safe, but someone showed me that silence, when it matters most, is a form of betrayal. Then he sat, adjusted the guitar, and began to play. It was soft at first, a silly song the children loved. His voice, rich and sincere, carried through the ballroom. Midway through, a little boy broke free from the crowd and rushed the stage. Uncle E, he cried, hugging Samuel tightly. Samuel smiled. Missed you too, buddy. From the back, Chloe felt her throat tighten. Her eyes stung. He saw her. He rose again, holding the mic. There's someone here who means more to me than she probably knows. I hurt her by saying nothing when I should have stood beside her. I thought silence would protect us both. He turned toward her now, open, vulnerable. She's here. And tonight, in front of all of you, I want her to know. I'm not afraid to be seen with her. I'm not afraid to reach for her hand in front of the world. A hush fell over the ballroom. Chloe stepped forward. Every movement felt heavy but right. Samuel extended his hand. She hesitated. Then slowly, she placed hers in his. Her smile broke through the tears. The crowd erupted into applause, but they only saw each other. No more rumors, no more silence. Only truth and a beginning. The change didn't happen overnight, but it was real. It began with a quiet email titled Listening Fridays. Every Friday afternoon, any employee, from janitor to junior manager, could book a 15-minute one-on-one with an executive. No scripts, no filters. At the bottom of the email was the signature, Samuel Graves. Some scoffed. Others rolled their eyes. But that Friday, Samuel showed up. He listened as a night shift bellhop shared his exhaustion. He took notes as a housekeeper explained how the schedule made it hard to care for her child. He didn't interrupt. He didn't defend. He just listened. And something started to change. The next week, more signed up. By the end of the month, staff no longer lowered their eyes when he walked in. They greeted him. Some even smiled. He began spotlighting employees who'd gone unnoticed for years. One day, in front of the entire team, he handed a framed certificate to Henry, the senior concierge he once publicly humiliated, for integrity, grace, and inspiring generations of service. Henry's hands trembled as he accepted it. "I never thought I'd see this day," he whispered. Chloe returned not as a cashier, but as manager of guest experience. She kept things simple, packed her own lunch, left her door open, and taught workshops on empathy, ethics, and courage in the workplace. The younger staff admired her. The veterans respected her. Even the skeptics began to listen. She never used her relationship with Samuel as leverage. She didn't need to. She had earned every bit of it. One overcast afternoon, Chloe came home to find her mother quiet at the kitchen table, eyes red. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. "The bakery lost power," her mom sighed. "They canceled the cake. I know it's silly, it's just... No one really celebrates my birthday anymore." Chloe hugged her. "It's not silly. You should be celebrated." That evening, just after sunset, someone knocked at their apartment door. Chloe opened it to find Samuel, not in a suit, but in jeans and a wool coat. Behind him stood a jazz trio and a bellhop holding a beautiful cake. Samuel stepped inside with a bouquet of sunflowers. "For you, Ms. Hart," he said softly, "from your daughter and from me." Chloe's mother stood frozen, eyes wide. "I didn't think anyone would remember," she whispered. "I didn't think anyone cared." Samuel smiled gently. "Your daughter taught me how important it is to remember the people who help make us who we are. They lit candles. They sang." And her mother laughed, a light, joyful sound Chloe hadn't heard in years. For a while, their small apartment became the warmest place in the world. Later that night, on the balcony, Chloe stood beside Samuel, city lights glowing below. "You really changed everything," she said. Samuel looked at her. "I didn't do it alone." She took his hand in hers. "You didn't just change a company, Samuel. You changed me." He held her gaze, then nodded. "And you helped me remember who I was meant to be." They stood together in silence. The next morning, hand in hand, they walked through the Crestwood lobby, the very place where everything began. But now it echoed with laughter, conversation, and the scent of fresh flowers. Staff smiled. Samuel smiled back, genuine, unguarded. As they passed the cashier station where it had all started, Chloe leaned in with a smirk. "Still think you hired the wrong person." Samuel chuckled, squeezing her hand. "No," he said softly. "You were right all along." Sometimes, the most powerful changes begin not with grand gestures, but with a single voice that dares to speak up. Chloe stood for what was right, not knowing her courage would soften the heart of a man everyone feared, and in doing so, she didn't just change a company. She helped someone find his way back to being human again. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of the quiet power of kindness and truth, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more heartfelt tales just like this. Stories of love, courage, redemption, and resilience. Because sometimes all it takes is one story to change the way we see the world or ourselves. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.